look, you knew what this was, right? Like, this shouldn't surprise anybody that's been watching me even for a little bit, because I have a history of certain things that really shouldn't surprise most people. I just feel like that maybe, just maybe, this isn't a shocker to anyone that I would buy this particular firearm. Hey there, Tubanites, it's your friendly neighborhood flash in the pan. We have a Glock 17L for you. This is a gun that's been on my radar for a long time, and was it a need? No. Who needs a Glock 17L? I mean, that's a 6-inch barrel. Sorry. It's a 6.02 inch barrel. And I make that distinction only to dunk on the Glock 34 people. The Glock 34 barrel is 5.31 inches. So when I see people post about their Glock 34s and the long boys, I like to remind them that they are 0.71 inches too short. And they need reminded of that regularly. No, look, it's like this. I've had my eye on this for a long time. I just thought it was fun. Long sight radius is really what I like. It really started with the Browning Buckmark for me. The longer sight radius that you have, so between, if you don't know, sorry, let's start at the basics. Sight radius is between your rear sight and your front sight. So how far that distance is allows you to shoot more accurately with good sights. The Browning Buckmark is actually a very good example of this. This is probably one of the most underestimated, not talked about pistols that exists, especially in the .22 world, but I would argue just period. The Browning Buckmark is outstanding. The trigger's outstanding. The functionality is outstanding. I have video on video. I haven't done one in a while. It's probably time. But in the past, I've done a bunch of videos on this of shooting it out to 50 yards, 100 yards, 200 yards with a pistol. Now look, 200 yards, 100 yards. You're getting lucky-ish, but you're not going to do that without a solid base pistol, and this is definitely one of them. I see sales on these every now and then, and I think about buying one every time. This is the Hunter model. I think they still make this. I haven't actually looked in a while, but this is a very long-barreled version of it. I think that's 7.5. What's this? So this is a 6.5 inch barrel. So yeah, we'll say 7.5. Can you see that difference-ish? Anyways, but the sight radius. So the distance between your sights actually helps dial in your accuracy. It's not just the sights, mind you, it's the gun itself. This being a .22 makes it easier because low recoil, you're not thinking about recoil when you shoot. But nonetheless, this is an outstanding pistol. If you're buying your first gun, I would highly recommend. Alright, now, going on, as you all know, I've got my Taurus 608 SS6, if I remember right, stainless steel. This is an 8-round revolver that I love to death. This was my first big boy gun that I bought for myself after childhood, I guess you could say. This was the one, but like same thing. This gun, so it's obviously in a 44 Magnum frame, and if you want to use Smith & Wesson terms, it's an N frame, but it is chambered for 357 Magnum or 38 Special, and because of that you get your 8 rounds, and it's ported also, which I don't care too much about, but this is an outstanding gun. It's very what's the word, what's the phrase, people miss this a lot, and it's a very good option for not buying a Smith & Wesson. Smith & Wesson is outstanding. I have my 642 that I want to buy variations therein because it's such an outstanding gun, but the longer barrels is where I'm at. We also have, more recently, I've bought this is a Pieta Buffalo 1858 Remington. I have not shot it yet because I really haven't done a lot of research into local ranges that will let me shoot black powder in it. I know of one for sure, but it's an outdoor range and we're getting into summertime and I don't necessarily want to shoot outdoors, but I will if I have to. I think this is going to be a lot of fun, but nonetheless, I think that the huge sight radius, especially on this monster 12-inch barrel, is going to play heavily into accuracy. Go check out Old Rangers YouTube page if you have not already for a lot of quality black powder content. Mix that with Deucin Guns and also Duelist 1954. Yeah, Duelist 1954. Those three channels have a good, especially Old Ranger and Duelist have mostly black powder content. Old Ranger especially deals a lot more with kind of the longer barrels, just the random variant. He's a little more scientific about it, whereas Duelist is a little more just general content. Deucin Guns, he's more like me, where you're just a hobbyist and you're like, oh, that's a cool, interesting firearm length. Let's play with that. I've got paint on it now because I'm painting magazines and other videos while I'm playing with this. Why are we talking about this? This is not about any of these things except for the fact to lay the groundwork for the fact that I like long barrels. Why do I I can't talk? Why do I like long barrels? Well, as I've just said, the sight radius plays into accuracy very much so. Also mix in with the fact that this is a Glock. Now, Glock gets poo-pooed on a lot recently because, you know, they haven't changed, blah, 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 blah. And I agree with a fair amount of that. However, you wouldn't have a lot of your modern firearms. You wouldn't have your M&P. You wouldn't have, what else? God, so many firearms that have succeeded recently if it weren't for Glock. So let's go back a little bit. This is my Gen 3 Glock 19. This is the most popular gun there is, period. Outside of maybe the AR-15, but when you go worldwide, that's it, friends. You can argue all you want. You can say, oh, my M&P this, my FN that, my SIG that. Cool, that's outstanding, cool. It doesn't matter. This is the world's most popular gun, period. Don't argue. There's no arguing. I preferred the Gen 3 myself just because it was kind of at a time when Glock said, you know what, this is pretty good. It took a while before they came out with Gen 4, and when they came out with Gen 4 and when they came out with Gen 5, everybody was like, did you really make that big a difference? This, my 17L now, if you will see, is a Gen 5. They did not make, or sorry, I think they did make a Gen 3, but those are unobtainium, and I was like, well, whatever. Glock recently discontinued a whole slew, 30 plus firearms that they are no longer making, and this was one of them, all the long boys included. So everything that has a longer barrel like this, 17 or longer. It's not 17, so longer than 17. Anything longer than the 4.9, I forget what 17 is, but whatever 17-inch Glock 17 barrel length is, and longer than that is being discontinued, plus a slew of various other models. And I was like, man, I really like that. I really want to get it. And I paid attention because if you really watch prices, so if you follow Mr. Guns and Gears, that's a good start to observe prices, but he's not the only one. There's a number. Iraq veteran Quad 8 is another one who pays kind of close attention, but not as good as Mr. Guns and Gear. But you should really subscribe to a number of different websites: Battlehawk Armory, Primary Arms, Classic Firearms, Palmetto State. Who am I forgetting? What's the one in Iowa? Brownells. There's a bunch of those that you should, honestly, you should be getting daily emails from to follow sales and such things. So I got this particular thing for about 529 silver dollars. I don't know if it's affecting my channel yet, but I know I'm supposed to talk about certain things when it comes to firearms. Nonetheless, I've seen it cheaper since then. I don't necessarily read it because I wanted one, and I got one, and that's cool. So far, so these are supposed to have the marksman trigger in them, and I will say it does feel lighter than my 19. It does feel lighter, but my 19 is crisper. And I don't know, now my 19's got over 1,000 rounds on it, maybe 1,200 rounds on it, and this has not been fired yet. I've just been dry firing it, but there's a little, you know me and that squish. There's a little squish right there, and then it's a very light break. I like that. The trigger's good. I'm not going to complain, and I'm probably not going to notice it when I'm shooting it live, as we've talked about before, but there's a little squish that I hope goes away, just like my Glock 19 there. There's a lot of these models. There's the 10mm model that's going up. There's the 40 cal. There's the 45. There's all kinds of models that are going on sale right now that are these long boys that have the marksmanship trigger on them. One of the things, sorry, trigger real quick. I recommend. I think that if that smooths out kind of like my 19 did, this is where it's at. Like, I don't know why they didn't put that trigger in all of these years ago, but Glock, right? There's a lot of things that we wish Glock would do that they don't do that would, anyways. Not only that, but where was I going with that? Lord, it's hard to remember what you were gonna say as soon as the camera turns on. Dang, I may have to cut in here. I probably will. Let's stop and think, and I'll just cut. Some of the differences between the Gen 3 and the Gen 5. So, not that it's a big deal. It's really not. So the recoil spring is one of the differences. That doesn't bother me so much. One of the differences between the Gen 3 and the Gen 5 Glock 17L is there was a cutout in here-ish to save weight. I don't know if that's for recoil spring. I don't know the physics behind that. And then before that, I think that this particular piece right here was machined into the slide, and that was one of the big differences. Well, and again, I don't know what YouTube's policy is anymore. It changes like 6 days a week. But let's just go ahead and take that apart where you can't see it. And I will show you that that piece is now made of, oh God, that's a far, I'm not going to slide that all the way out. But that is a removable piece, and it is not metal. It is polymer. So that piece stays on the slide, but is removable. And that is one of the differences that there is between the Gen 5 and the Gen 3. There is no Gen 4 Glock 17L that I'm aware of, but nonetheless, there you go. Let me fumble this back together because it's such a long boy. It's a little more awkward. There we go. One of the things that I also like about this, so we've talked about this before, especially more recently when I've done my Walter videos with the extended magazine bases, and even my Beretta videos where you have the Glock 19 with the Stendo in it, and it's fun. Like, you go to the range, or if poop hits the fan, you gotta, why would you do that? And you gotta deal with whatever. No one cares what you look like per se. However, the first rule is always look cool. I feel like that with the 17L, that's not quite as ridiculous. It looks a little more like that should probably be there. I'd like to get some more variations. That's one of the 33 rounders, or the 29 plus for you YouTube moderator types, that will fit in these. There's a bunch of variety of that now, between magazine extensions and or Magpul. Even Glock itself has done some random like 21, 24 round variations. It's something I want to get more into, but I've got a number of 17 mags. I've got 2 Magpuls. Now I've got, what, 4 regular 17 Glock mags, and then I've got 4 of these 29 plus Stendos that will make a range trip very helpful. I look forward to it. I think this gun is going to be a lot of fun. I think that if it's something that you want, you absolutely have to get it now. The sales are outstanding. These are below 5 centennials these days, and there's no excuse for it. And there's varieties. If you want the 10mm version, if you want the 40 cal version, I think there's a 45 version as well that has tempted me once or twice. It's a lot of fun. It's a piece of history, and something that Glock is no longer going to make. Why not go ahead and treat yourself a little bit? So we will take you to the range as always, and for those of you that celebrate, happy Father's Day. I appreciate you guys watching. As always, leave a good comment, constructive criticism, all the stuff like that. Appreciate you, and I will see you on the next one. Take care now.